Namaste and welcome to this exciting new episode of Sattology, debunking mythology. Sat means truth, logos means a study of science, Sattology means a science of truth, study of truth. It's a true antonym of mythology. Myth means a lie, fake, imagination, and mythology means a science or study of lie, fake, or imagination. Today we have a very, very special guest, a great Rishi, Muni, researcher, and personally a great friend. And you know who is there because all of you attended the show at this time. And one of the things we are going to today talk about the importance of truth in our own lives is a Saraswati part 3 presentation. And we are saying the Sat, we say Rajas Tamas and Sattvik, Rajasic, Tamasic. So we discussed already Tamasic and Rajasic means mode of ignorance, mode of passion. Now we're discussing today the mode of goodness on the type of researchers. So without delay, let us welcome Shri Nilesh Oak.
Namaskar, Aditya ji.
See, in Kali Yuga, the truth is the one leg which keeps breaking down slowly, and that is the biggest casualty. That's why we have seen a lot of people, they speak without any responsibility all over the place. And they want everyone else to believe that that is the ultimate truth. And it is the biggest casualty, and I think the relative truth has become the real truth. What is your view on that?
Okay, I have quite a view. You as if you open a can of worms. but no, let me just summarize few. Just recently, I started using a metaphor. Now, somebody gave that metaphor to me, and I said, I'll give him the credit. And he said, no, don't give me the credit. Just use the metaphor. Don't necessarily say my name. So I'll not tell you who that person is. But what he said is, when we discuss things, when we discuss Sat, the truth, the factual knowledge, many of, in the language of this individual, he said, Nileshji, when you are talking, when you're sharing the Sat, or when you're sharing empirical evidence, experiential evidence, you are talking in a computer language as if the RAM that you expect people to have is like 128 MB. He said, this particular individual, he said, well, I like to think, he said, that at least I have a 4 MB of RAM, and therefore I understand what you're saying, I feel impressed, and that's how actually we connected. He said the majority, and this is you can say the Mahima of a Kali Yuga, majority have either 1 MB RAM or refuse to use any of the additional ones. And that also creates a problem, which is to say, almost everywhere, this is that tamasic buddhi that we talked about, sarvarthan viparitamsha buddhi sa partha tamasi. Everything that is given to them almost ready on the platter. It's amazing. They will find a way to almost take that sat, turn through 180-degree opposite, and comprehend is as a myth. So they can turn this 180-degree opposite and then understand it, which is a misunderstanding. Recently on a Twitter also I wrote, which is to say, after listening to me giving a presentation, usually the Q&A session, the feeling I get it, like when I would say something, no, this person is wrong. What this person is claiming is wrong. There is no evidence for it. And then people will say, but come on, he's impressive. He talks impressively. What's wrong? Why we have to worry about the experience? Why we are about to worry about the evidence? Which is to say, again, exactly 180-degree opposite. Now we need to tell people why Sat is important. Forget the next part. What is a Sat? But even why Sat is important. Now, in some sense, that is okay. So what I say is this is in a way that ahimsa, when we talk about the foundational moral values, ahimsa, satyam, that is that sat, asteya, akama, akrodha, alobha. When we're talking about these as the foundational moral elements, in a way, we have to accept this on the strength of a shraddha. For example, like ahimsa, we talk about ahimsa, and even a crude translation as a non-violence. And when somebody is literally being violent, like some religions are violent, some ideologies are violent, right? So when they are following that ideologies, and how do we keep trust a conviction that still the Sat matters, still the Ahimsa matters. Now, sometimes this can be very challenging, right? I mean, you see the news and what are the things happening. But that's when you need the Shraddha. And so those people who naturally using their intellect understand why Sat is important, that's easy. Why Sattology is important, that's easy. But if they don't, I think they need to start with a Shraddha. Otherwise, it's an all downhill journey.
No, Shraddha is a very difficult topic. We need to talk something else in detail. Some other session we need to have a organize different session.
Yeah.
You said very right point. Viparitansha, which is a very appropriate word used by Krishna himself. Now, the point is when some people they say like that, they reject the authority of Veda. Then ultimately now they are working on a baseless mode. So there is no foundation now. So in a way, they are negating their own self directly. And so if Veda doesn't remain the foundation, then the foundation becomes the individual scholars who have the tendency to make mistakes.
Yeah.
So then your foundation will come from Winston Churchill or whatever, I don't know where the foundation comes from. Then automatically the rest of the conclusion will be wrong. Isn't that true?
Yes, I mean, that is postmodernism, where everyone is right in his own way or in her own way.
Tato mat.
There you go. Okay. Postmodernism is not new, like what you said. Okay. They just give some sophisticated name to a very useless type of philosophy and just do it. So, yeah, you are right. Just one more thing I'll add. Remember, I was telling you, I wrote it like, almost like this. Therefore, this folks who refuse to use anything above 1 MB of RAM in comprehending things, almost like I get a feeling that the example I gave you, as if they want the original researchers to act like propagandists,
Right.
and they want the original researchers to treat the propagandist as if they are researchers. And I put that comment, and do you know what somebody wrote? And I like that statement. I know exactly who wrote that also. One girl named Chaitali. And she wrote, well, she said, this is similar to this. And then she wrote down, she said, where people take entertainment as education, like whatever is showed, the whole stupid stuff in Bollywood, they will take it as a true, literally, because they see it in the movie. So that they take it as education. And many take the education as an entertainment. So entertainment as education, education as entertainment. Again, if you go back to Krishna's words, Sarvarthan Viparitamsha, exactly opposite. So that's my point. So we can start. If you, I need access to share the file.
Yes. Yeah. So
Okay, very good. Yeah, I see it. Okay. So today, Aditya ji, this is our third part, and we will close on this subject of River Saraswati today. Last time we looked at the Tama and also Raja. So the second part we did Raja, and today we will look at the Sattva. In the Sat, in the sense of factual, that is out there as is, like Sat is what is, So we'll look at this. Now we will also look at in the when we apply a specific approach or pratyaksha anumana or scientific approach, it is very fascinating. It is what Krishna is also telling in Bhagavad Puran, like pratyaksha anumana bhyam shreyo samanuvindate. But it is also something that keeps on evolving, meaning whatever is our truth today, this is not a relative truth we are talking, but we are talking about our limitation of our ability, our investigative ability, our intellectual ability. So few things, new things might come in future. And in the spirit of Sanatano Nitya Nutana, like, it's always refreshing itself. When the new evidence comes, we regroup ourselves, we reanalyze, and we see if any of our conclusion changes. So that is very much acceptable. Just like Krishna will tell you in the Bhagavad Gita, like he says, so and so says this, some other person says this, some other person says this, but now listen to my considered opinion. So now he's telling you different viewpoints, and now he's telling what he recommends. So something like that will happen. So yes, we are going for a Sat today. Again, a theme that is consistent with the name of your organization, program, what you want to call it, Sattology. a factual narrative.
It
Now,
belongs
this
to
is
all of
the
us.
yes, this is the era of goddess Saraswati. Hmm. Just to complete that series of three type of buddhi, so we looked at the tamasi buddhi, which is exactly sees 180-degree opposite. We looked at the rajasi buddhi, and rajasi buddhi, what does it say? It's not completely wrong, but it's not completely right either. It's a mixed bag, and we looked at some of the researchers what they do. This is this Sattvika buddhi, So pravrittim cha nivrittim cha karya karye bhaya bhaye bandham moksham chaya vetti buddhi sa partha sattviki. Like it is capable of differentiating, which is what is emphasized, that first, once you define a problem, then you do the vislation, like you do the differentiation and ability to differentiate, not like saying everyone is a right. This is what happens in the conferences many time. I'll go. I mean, if you listen to this, Aditya, you will laugh at this. For example, like many academics, I'm talking of people in academia. Like, when I go to a conference and then I'll give my presentation, they will come and say, Nilesh ji, this was a great presentation. And because I have talked about dating of Mahabharata or Ramayana, whatever it is, and then they will say, yeah, 2 years ago, there was this another professor who came from Canada, and he also gave a very good date for Mahabharata. Now you see the foolishness of this statement. See, if I mean, that professor, whoever gave the date, I gave the date, we both could be wrong. Okay. And one of the two could be right, but it's never possible that both of us are correct if it is a one historical event. But not even actually, the folks in academics do not even many times understand this simple thing. It's very, very frustrating. In fact, we should have an ability to differentiate. Many of the Indic researchers I'm aware, they are so fearful, even when they can see multiple different claims, and they may have actually a scientific acumen and logical reasoning skills. They are so fearful, they will not dare to say, this is wrong, and here is why. This appears to be right, and here is why it is right. Okay. What are they fearful of? I mean, one of the Devi Prakruti or Devi quality is abhayam, fearlessness, abhayam sattva samshuddhi, and then humbleness. And then because they are so fearful, you push them a little bit, and suddenly you will find they get very angry. They are not behaving arrogantly before, but now they start in the discussion, they start behaving arrogantly. And I'm telling you, these are the private discussions, just one-on-one discussions. Why? Because they dare not be fearless, and the natural effect is that the person cannot be humble or cannot act humble. How funny is this? What a beautiful arrangement Krishna made in that 16th chapter. He says, starts with the abhayam, the whole Devi quality list, and it ends with the namrata or amanita. That is the word that is used. So we should, when you are fearless and also humble, you have no problem telling what is wrong, what is myth, what is sat. Okay, that is what this verse is referring to. Now let's look at the Saraswati. What is really it is? This graph that you are seeing is from a research paper written in 1970, so about 50 years ago. And right now, Saraswati doesn't exist anywhere. It's nowhere. But the last path, the paleo channel, a dry channel of Saraswati that is identified, is somewhere here, where you see these, where I'm rolling my cursor. Okay, so Hanumangarh, Pilibangan, Suratgarh, Anupgarh. This is the area, Shirsa. That's where you find a channel. But if you go back in deeper antiquity, you can go towards the southeast. So this is the part of India, like in the state of Rajasthan here, in the northwest corner of current day India. And if you come down to the southeast here, a number of you might have heard the name of this famous city, the Pink City, Jaipur. And there is every reason, based on the actual geographical studies, that Saraswati would have flown along this path, like nearby Jaipur, through Ajmer area to Jodhpur, and so on and so forth, going towards Gujarat. Long time ago. The paleo channel has been identified, but we need to do additional research if you want to find out how long ago was that. And it's not very easy research. It's not like people just saying, oh, why government is not doing it. This is not easy research. But let me tell you something. Then geographical shift happened, and it shifted in the further northwest direction. And then the Saraswati started flowing through this area of a Bikaner, near Bikaner. Then something happened again, and then it started flowing around this Anupgarh, and then finally it disappeared. I'm going to show you how far back we have to go, and we have not gone as far back as we need to. And that will just may or may not come through research. So initial, very ancient path, and when I tell you the years, you realize how ancient I'm referring to. We just have not explored near Jaipur, but there is every reason to if somebody wants to. So people wonder, like, hey, what can I research on? Well, here is something. Then I'm going to actually show evidence near Bikaner, and I'm going to tell you how old it is. And then finally, near Anupgarh, I'm also going to show with evidence that how old is that evidence, and how possibly why it shifted, the Saraswati path shifted from the southeast area to the northwest. This is a quick pictorial of the map of India where all the water is removed. So remember the plate tectonic, the part of India, the Indian subcontinent, which was way down with Africa and Australia and whatnot. When Australia was also not where it is today, they were all together, the Pangea, and people would have heard these words. So on the plate tectonic, India is moving and India is coming towards Asia. Finally, it hit into Asia. When this Indian subcontinent, this plate hit into Asia, that is when these all mountains are formed. And just see how protective it is. That is the beautiful description of India. Like 3 sides is the ocean and 1 side is the mountain, the Himalaya. But actually think of it, the Himalayas, the whole ranges goes all the way to Hindu Kush and all that area. Very, very nicely protected area. Now, what happens is this moment of the tectonic plate, this Indian subcontinent, it is not over. It is still going. Okay, it's a very slow motion. So every few centimeters, few inches or something is going every year, whatever that number is. And still, as if like it's like an accident in progress. Okay, it's just happening. And that leads to many geographical changes. So now you can relate. Suppose imagine this one is hitting this area, the flat area that has been formed here on the west side also, like Rajasthan, Haryana, all the way to southern part of Pakistan. On the east side, the whole UP, and then Bihar and Bengal. Okay, so you see how flat it is. Now the plate is moving up, and that's why geographically it tends to shift the paths of the river. For example, it can explain why the river Saraswati kept on shifting from southeast to northeast. That is just an explanation. Let me take you to Bikaner. This is a very recent paper, 2020. Okay, that is just a title. The first dated evidence of middle late Pleistocene fluvial activity in the central Thar Desert by James Blinkhorn and few other scientists. Okay, I'll just give you a quick summary of it as to what is the takeaway. In that quarry, now see, that's why I'm saying it's a very costly affair. How did they find the evidence of river Saraswati there? Now, they are not even using the word river Saraswati, but that's not required. Going back 1970, Ghosh and others, those researchers have actually traced down the paleo channels of river Saraswati. That is what you're seeing here, number 1 and 2 here near going Bikaner. Now, this particular quarry existed for something. I don't know the quarry for what. It's called Nal Quarry. And because naturally you are digging, and while they were doing it, that's where they found this evidence, because they were doing it for some other commercial purpose. That's why there is a money to do it. Many ordinary folks don't realize how much money is required to do this kind of research. Okay, actually do the digging and taking out and then analyzing in the lab using sophisticated equipment and so on. So quick summary of this is what they found there is that this river Saraswati flowing near Bikaner is as old as 172,000 years. Just simplicity, we can say about 200,000 years. Now, something very interesting, that shift from the river flowing in Bikaner to the latest location, which is near Kalibanga. When did that happen? Okay, so from here, from Bikaner to now here, which is going to this area, so Kalibanga, Anupgarh, and after that, this area is the area of Pakistan. Okay, so this movement from Bikaner to further northwest, that happened, very, very interesting. That, and then it split, Saraswati split again. That happened about 75,000 years ago. And those of you who are into geology, they would know that around that time, there was the biggest volcanic eruption that Earth has seen in last 100,000 years. That was the Toba explosion. So it is my speculative prediction that the activities, the geological changes, geological activities related to Toba explosion that caused Toba explosion or led to Toba explosion could be responsible for this shift of a river Saraswati from the Bikaner area to now the Kalibanga area, but it remains just a conjecture. Let's look at last 100,000 years. This is a paper of Peter Clift. He used to be in UK, now he's in Louisiana State. This is 2012 paper, wonderful paper. The exploration that they have done in along the path of river Saraswati, because there is no water anymore, okay? It is just the ancient path of the river, these dotted lines and that everything that you see. This portion is now in modern day Pakistan, okay? Of course, that was a part of a great Bharatvarsha. And based on that, what they found, this is their paper, uranium, lead, zircon dating evidence for the Pleistocene Saraswati River and capture of the Yamuna River. The capture of Yamuna River by Ganga, okay, Ganga Basin. So that's Peter Clift and all others from various schools. This is what exactly happens. You dig inside in the Paleo channel, take out, just the mud cake, you can say, okay, just like that. And then there are different ways of doing it. First thing, you look at the dating of the individual layers. And then there are ways, and I'm going to briefly mention how you decide which river might be feeding the water. It's a wonderful, wonderful technique. Okay. So that's why you are seeing these different gradation, as you go down that core that is taken from the earth in the Paleo channel. It gives you different types of information. It gives you dating information. It gives you which might be the tributaries of river Saraswati and so on. Just as a high level summary, what this paper did, and this is not the first paper at all, but this did it in a very decisive way. There are research papers, research theses written before, like going back to 50 and 60 and 70 years. And there are papers after these 2012 papers, every single paper validating this particular conclusion time and time again. River Yamuna and river Saraswati separated from each other. When did that river Yamuna separated? Between 50,000 and 40,000 BCE. Now, Aditya-ji, why is this important? This is important for many reasons, just to understand the evolution or devolution of river Saraswati. But something else, and that is why Krishna says, you should never look at only one piece of evidence. Or in Bhagavad Puran, it talks about Shruti Pratyaksham Aitiyam Anumanam Chatushtayam Pramaneshu Anuvasthanat. Why quadrangulation of Shruti, Smriti, Pratyaksha, Anumana, Aitiya, experience, background knowledge is required. This particular verse that I'm just quoting here, again, we don't have to read it. It is from Valmiki Ramayana, and it is referring to Ganga and Yamuna together. Now, why is this important? Just now look at what our evidence is telling us, that Ganga and Yamuna, Yamuna started meeting Ganga only after 50,000 BCE. And Valmiki Ramayana is very casually describing actually multiple times Ganga and Yamuna together, which means Valmiki Ramayana cannot happen any time before 50,000 BCE. This is how we take the empirical data evidence. This is how we objectively test it. And in the context of Aitiya, like in this case, Ramayana, we draw the proper inference. Now here also this, what you talked about, the one leg, the leg of Kali Yuga and all this confusion of people, they don't understand this when you say it, because they don't have more than 1 MB RAM in their intellect. Okay. Or if they have it, they refuse to use it. So now see, now we have a empirical data, but in the context of ancient Indian narratives, now this is becoming even not just useful, but actually a super useful. Okay. Now think of the whole Indian tradition. People think, "Arey, what is this childish thing?" Like you deifying even the rivers, you deifying even the mountains. Like this is here river Ganga, or here this is river Yamuna, or this one is from Japan, by the way, the last one, river Saraswati. Okay, she's known by a different name. Now, oh, what is this deification business? Isn't that childish? Well, yes and no. If you take it literally, then it is childish. If you understand at the metaphorical level and at a spiritual, adhyatmic level, then it's no longer childish. Here, what you are seeing on the right is actually a signature of each river. Okay, how fascinating. So like as a human beings has their signature, unless when you write a check in the bank, unless that signature matches, they will not necessarily release the money. Okay, and that's when the fraud happens and so on. Here, as if every river has a signature. Aditya, I'll just tell you just a digression quickly for humor, a humorous digression, let's say. Recently, this funny thing was floating around, and so I think I read it on WhatsApp somewhere, where how the doctors write the prescription. You can't read it, and then you hope that the pharmacist and the chemist can read it, and of course they do. So one patient, with a lot of frustration, he goes back to his doctor, and he says, please, you wrote down these 5 medicines for me. The 4 medicines, the last 4 medicines I could find, but that first medicine, no pharmacy. I went to some 50 different pharmacies and none of them have it. And the doctor just smiles, and doctor says, no, actually the first one that you see is not a prescription. I was just before writing a prescription, I was just checking if my pen is working or not. So he just dribbles something, now, but the fun is even ahead, And then he said, the patient says, well, thank you, doctor. Well, fortunately, he says, actually, one of the chemists did say that he can get that first medication to come tomorrow. Right? Okay. But the humor aside, actually, this river has a signature. How's that signature? Based on the certain type of rocks, certain type of minerals they are bringing in their path, and that depends on where they originated. Okay, so that first thing, the signature needs to be defined. Now, based on that, that's how this research is done. Very fascinating research. Again, this is from another paper from IIT Kanpur, 2017. They are digging down like a 30. Look at the y-axis, the 40 meters. They are going down to 40 meters and removing that core, the earth core, and then they are studying it, just like what I showed you. A quick summary of this is that the river Saraswati at this Kalibanga location began flowing around 70,000 years. Very interesting. The Bikaner River, the area in the river flow in the Bikaner stopped around 75,000 years. And here it began around 75,000 years. So almost like the shift is instantaneous and it's very consistent. Then river Yamuna separated from 50,000. That was done by Peter Clift in 2012. That is also verified, validated by 2017 paper. In fact, if you go back to 1985, like Marie Corti in France, or then 1992, Henry Frankfurt, they have also done this research. They have shown the same thing. And even as late as Dave in 2018, again validated that the river Yamuna separated from river Saraswati sometime between 50,000 to 40,000. Now, if I just say this is just another some numbers to remember. Okay. But do you know what is important, Aditya? The whole mainstream Saraswati researchers, and I'm not referring to the mythologists that we talked in the first part, who don't even believe Saraswati existed, But I'm telling you, those who believe that Saraswati existed are claiming Yamuna separating from Saraswati 2700 BCE, which is like 5,000 years ago, whereas the factual, consistent, multiple studies data is showing it happened 50,000 to 40,000 BCE. Just 5,000 versus 50,000, an order of magnitude difference. Okay, this is what I'm telling you, the difference between Rajas and Satya or Sattva. Then what happens is, by the time you come to after 2022, the river is getting narrow and narrow. By 12,000, if you go here, if you look at this here, okay, that is why, because I'm going to show you on the next one, the Satlaj also stopped feeding its water to river Saraswati. And then after 12,000, what you find is actually the water was just in that middle portion by say Mahabharata times, or just after Mahabharata times, it completely dried out. Okay, so this one here, if you see, right now Satlaj is before, right now meaning before, more than 15,000 years ago. You see that dark arrow, Satlaj right now in Punjab, Rupanagar, it sharply turns westward here. This is Satlaj and goes in the west direction, and eventually first meets whatever different river Bias, and then eventually meets Sindhu. But 15,000 years ago, that was not the case. 15,000 years ago, this is IIT Kanpur paper again, that Satlaj was coming straight down and meeting Saraswati, and then other side Yamuna was coming. But Yamuna is also gone away now, 50,000, 40,000 BC. Now in 13,000 BC, suddenly what happened is that river Satlaj stopped coming to the south and it started flowing in the west direction. So this is just again a factual data, like what's happening to Saraswati. It might explain why Saraswati eventually disappeared, because Yamuna is not feeding water, Satlaj is not feeding water. But now again, what Krishna says, do the quadrangulation with the Shruti, Smriti, Itihasa, and Pratyaksha Anumana. What we are looking here is a Pratyaksha Anumana. Why? Because that removes our confusion. Okay. Shruti Pratyaksha Maitiyam Anumanam Chatushtayam Pramaneshu. These are Pramana. Anavasthanat Vikalpat Savirajate. When you use these all four together, then you are not unstable. Your intellect is not unstable. Your comprehension is not anavasthana. Okay, it gets fixed, and vikalpa, the delusion, confusion goes away. Now let's see this another example. What it is showing here again is that, of course, the river Yamuna Ganga meeting that we already looked at. Now something here at the top. This is again from Valmiki Ramayana, which says when Bharat is coming back to Ayodhya, he describes, or Valmiki describes, river Shatudru, which is Satlaj, as the one which is flowing with lots of water, but flowing in the west direction. Aha, beautiful. We know that Satlaj, based on this Pratyaksha Anumana evidence, that Satlaj started flowing westward only 15,000 years ago. And Valmiki Ramayana is describing it is flowing in the west direction. That should tell us, again, triangulation of explanation, prediction, testing, or Pratyaksha Anumana Upamana Shabda. What does it tell you? That Ramayana can only happen in the last 15,000 years. That is how we get these upper limits. It just so happens that this evidence is giving you upper limit. This is just a summary of it. Or just one example of that signature that I was talking. For example, Yamuna signature. Now this is on the certain type of particles they bring and their size and their age and whatnot. This one is Yamuna, this one is Satlaj. And so we know their true signatures. And imagine if we dig down into the paleo channel and remove the core, and we can date that core. And now we want to see in a certain portion which rivers were feeding their waters to Saraswati. That's exactly what we do. We go into that layer, we look at those particular type of stones or type of crystals, type of particles that have been brought, like this, all that area that you see. And we can try to match with the original signature and say, this particular one, for example, like here, GS11, I mean, we are not going to go into detail. What could be its reason? And this might tell me that, this could be only Satlaj maybe, and not much Yamuna, or very little Yamuna. If I go here, this particular one, GS11 here at certain layer, it will tell me that this one more than likely, if we can see my arrow, is due to not only Satluj but also Yamuna, because it's a mixture of these. So if I know the dating of that time period, I can say at that time both Satluj and Yamuna were feeding its waters to Saraswati. It's very, very beautiful, how this analysis is done. It's like a very detective work, fingerprints and signatures, and we are using this to identify which river is feeding the water, but also the antiquity, when it was doing it. Not only which, but also not only who, but even when. Let's come to last 20,000 years. Again, where you see this star is the time of Mahabharata. And this light blue color is not done by me, by the way. Okay. It is coming from this paper here, Anindo Sarkar's paper 2016. What is it telling you? With a very consistent picture based on the evidence from the Arabian Sea, from the lakes from Rajasthan. Even some of these lakes are no longer lakes. Okay. These are like a paleo lakes, only the area exists. You have to dig to find out when the water was there and what kind of water supply was there and so on. And the last one is evidence coming from the land from all over the area of Sindhu Saraswati civilization. All of these different sources giving a very consistent picture that there was an intensification of monsoon from 7000 BC to 4500 BC. Okay, and Mahabharata falls in there, and therefore the 100 plus beautiful descriptions of river Saraswati from the Mahabharata text can be corroborated, matched very well based on this evidence. Now, do you know what, again, going back to Sattva versus Raja, many of these folks from the Raja community, Rajasa community, and not royalty, I'm talking, Raja, the mode of passion, passionate, emotional. That's what I mean by the propaganda sometimes, emotional. They believe something has to be true, and therefore it is true. How foolish, but that is how they will interpret. What they think is the Rigveda came from this time, and that is not correct. Now, it is true that at the time of Mahabharata, it was the Vedavyasa who recasted and re-edited the Vedas. So yes, but the actual evidence of river Saraswati, for example, that is in the Rigveda, goes back into deep antiquity. For example, Giribhya Samudra or Saraswati is that mighty river which cuts the tops of the mountains like somebody cutting the stems of the lotus plant. That is not possible at all during this time. But because some of these people are emotional, passionate, so rajas is a very good word that matches. They want to visualize something happening in the time because that's their desire inside. So they confuse what is their wish with the reality. Okay, that is the problem. That is the confusion of a knowledge. That is not to say that they are wrong on everything. No, they are not wrong on everything, but they are unfortunately wrong on very crucial points. Okay, here this is another study. Again, some of you who are not into geology, even I'm not in geology. I studied this for the sake of it because I had to study with my other research. Here, same thing. I'm showing you exactly same chart. In fact, I will highlight also. Sorry, I couldn't highlight. But this part that is shown here, 7,000 is like a 9,000 BP. So imagine from here, 9,000 to 6,500 somewhere here. So this area actually, this area in between, strong monsoon. Okay, that is where again Mahabharata falls right here. My point is, here they made another confusion. This Rajasa crowd, Adityaji, in between. This one is, I don't have a slide on that, but I will explain. Let me go back. I'll explain. Do you know what they used? First thing, this paper uses a bit of a confusing language. Now, it's not a fault of the paper itself, because paper will say the river was perennial. Okay, so river was perennial here, river was perennial here, perennial here. And now these all the Rajasa crowd, the researchers, Saraswati researchers, do you know how they have confused the hell out of this? They have taken perennial river and they just made an assumption because that's what they would like to see in their mind. And therefore they start saying it even when the evidence is telling exactly opposite. The perennial river, they said, a perennial, so Aditya, you'll love this by the way. The perennial river, they said, oh, how is perennial river, meaning the river that is flowing 12 months and always there is a water, how is that possible without the water source from the glaciers, which are in the rainy season, rain is coming, but other times the glaciers are melting and that's what feeding the water. Now, what is wrong with this? Because all the perennial rivers are not necessarily glacier fed. And actually, people in social media, even so-called academics and professors and PhDs and whatnot, even people from very specific fields related to this area of geology have fought with me. For example, one said, okay, so how if a river is perennial, doesn't that mean it's a glacier fed? I said, no, not necessarily. It can be glacier fed. It may not be glacier fed. He says, okay, so how is the river water possible? And then you will love it because you have lived in different parts of the world, but also India. I said, well, have you heard of river Narmada? This is on a social group, I'm telling you. Have you heard of river Tapi? Have you heard of river Godavari, Krishna, Bhima, Mahanadi, okay, Chambal, Betwa, Shon, Kaveri, Tamraparni, Vaigai? I said, all of these rivers are perennial rivers and none of them is fed by glacier waters. So they start with the wrong premise and therefore naturally they draw the wrong conclusions. It's given. If your premise is wrong, based on that premise, whatever conclusion you draw will be wrong. So these are the challenges, and that's why I'm taking time, although it looks very technical, showing it. Let's look at the last 10,000 years. Remember what I said, this Rajasa group is so gung-ho, so stuck on insisting that Rigveda comes from this 7,000 to 5,000 BCE. They are dead wrong. Now, the small benefit I'll give them is that the recasting, re-editing of the Vedas did happen around the Mahabharata times, 6th millennium BCE, 5561 BC, and around that, Vyasa did it. And yes, so in some sense, some of the references from that time are part of the Rigveda, not a surprise, like we know Shantanu and Devapi and so on. Okay, in fact, river, I don't know if I have a slide on that, river Sindhu, even as much as Rigveda talks about river Saraswati as the grandest river, even that same Rigveda is also talking of river Sindhu as the grandest river. Now, somebody should ask the question, how can two rivers be the grandest? Or maybe in this different context. Well, the answer is both rivers are the grandest. That is correct. One river is at a certain point of time. Another river is at another point of time. In fact, 13,000 BCE is that change of scenario. Until 13,000 BCE, Saraswati was the grandest river. After 13,000 BCE, Sindhu became the grandest river. And that is that Nadi Sukta of 10.75. Now, why is this important? Because this is important for this whole dogma that is created for Rigveda being sometime around 7,000 to 5,000 BC. Absolutely no substance in it, because some of actually the good number of descriptions of river Saraswati, Giribhya Samudrat, for example, the river that starts in high mountains and flows all the way to the ocean, is simply not possible in last 10,000 years. And that is this paper of Konde. In fact, Konde team wrote 3 papers in 2014, 2016, 2017. I'll not go into the technical analysis of it, but a simple conclusion of theirs is that no Himalayan river flowing to Great Run of Kutch, that is where Saraswati ended, in the last 10,000 years. Now, I'll give you, Aditya and I'm almost done. I'll give you the idea behind this, how Tamasic crowd confuses this research and how Rajasic crowd also confuses this research. Remember, Rajasic are those passionate and they have their own assumption that as if like Rigveda must fit somewhere in 7,000, 5,000 BC. Honestly, I don't know why they have such a very arbitrary claim for such a thing. I mean, what happened to the Sat? Like, let the evidence direct you wherever it directs you. It doesn't matter. Let the evidence direct you. Now, if the additional evidence comes and therefore, if we have to change our conclusion, nothing wrong with it. So that is a Rajasic crowd. I'll tell you how they misrepresent this. And then the Tamasic crowd also, the mythologies that we talked in the first part, and then in their lackeys in India, and then whole this garbled postmodernist and post-truisms and leftist and communist and all that. because these guys have nothing to do with the truth. Okay, they have their agenda, they want to push it. So this paper is saying no Himalayan river flowing to Great Run of Kutch in the last 10,000 years. So likes of Irfan Habib, Romila Thapar, and these all their, we can say their Western masters, or whoever, the leftist, communist, anti-India forces, the people who don't give a damn to the truth. Do you know how they interpret this? He says, look, we told you this whole river Saraswati simply did not exist. Look at this data. There is no great river, Himalayan river flowing into Great Run of Kutch in last 10,000 years. That is how they interpret it. Their intellect is so warped that they forget to read the paper carefully of Konde. Konde is not saying that there was no river flowing from the mountains to the ocean in the Great Run of Kutch in India. They're saying there was no such grand river in the last 10,000 years. But it was there before. There is every reason to, there is evidence to show that it existed before. So this is the fiasco of a tamasic crowd. Now, what is the fiasco of a rajasic crowd? Because rajasic crowd, again, with their passion and their dogma, they are stuck for the reasons only, hopefully they know what they are, that the Rigveda is from 7,000 to 5,000 BC or 4,000 BC or 3,000 BC. Therefore, when they look at this, they don't like it. Okay, because no grand river, no Himalayan river flowing river. Therefore, if you see this previous one here, that is why they are somehow in the process of justifying, twisting, torturing to show that there was actually a Himalayan flowing river here. The evidence says actually there was no river. Now, look at this evidence here. Higher Himalayan sediment. So now someone asked me, okay, Nilesh, so you are saying there is no Himalayan river. No, I am not saying it. Evidence is saying is there no Himalayan river. So how come there are higher Himalayan sediments in this area? Okay, well, the answer is actually very simple. Because the intensification of monsoon happened. Now, what does it do? Actually, the water flow increases, and therefore, even the water from that area, like Shiva Lakes, Himalaya, that is also coming. And because of the heavy water of a volume, some additional crystals, the Himalayan crystals, are also brought in. Okay. It's just a common sense, guys, but nobody is even interested in looking at the alternate explanation. So now what they do is a paper like somebody like Konde's paper, 3 papers, in fact, 14, 16, and 17, most of this Rajasic crowd will not refer to them, or if they have to, if they are forced to refer to them, they will somehow find a way to dismiss them as not that important. Okay, so this is the non-Sattvik, non-truthful, untruthful game that is being played as it relates to river Saraswati. Okay, so now this one is from Mahabharata, and it just, so now people may say, oh, okay, but there is a lot of water also some places described in Mahabharata in river Saraswati. How do you explain that? If there is no river flowing in the 10,000, well, I just did it. There was an intensification of monsoon at the time of Mahabharata war in 6 millennium BC, and that explains it. Okay, these are the paleo channels of those. And I'll go fast through this. These are the descriptions of river Saraswati from the older time that I already described. Like, as if like somebody cutting the stem of Lotus River, river Saraswati is cutting the mountain tops, or how fast it is moving, and how it is the grandest river, Ambitame, Naditame, Devitame, Saraswati, and so on. Okay. Now, these all descriptions of river Saraswati in Rigveda belong to the time that is sometime before 22,000 BC, that is more than 24,000 years. There is no way you can bring Rigveda to 7,000 to 5,000 BCE, the Rigveda content. So that is the Rajasic crowd doing. What is the Tamasic crowd doing? Tamasic crowd says river Saraswati did not exist. If it existed in Afghanistan or Iran. And Rigveda, they wrote it there and then they brought it to India. Okay, that is the kind of distortion, torturing, twisting that is done by both the Tamasic crowd, but also the Rajasic crowd. Okay, and they both groups are so proud to consider themselves as researchers. Okay, or many times academic researchers. Okay, so and then if you look at this, let's see. Okay. These descriptions point to post 13,000. This is that Nadi Sukta. 10.75. And this, I got the Hindi translations here. I mean, Aditya ji, not everybody can read, but you will able to read it. This is from Pandit Sattology ji. And but you can read any translation, doesn't matter English and all. You see, look here. इन बहने वाली नदियों में सिंधु नाम की नदी स्वबल से सर्वों में श्रेष्ठ है. This is from Nadi Sukta. Or if you go down to another one, it says सरलगामिनी श्वेत वर्णा और प्रदीप्ता सिंधु नदी अत्यंत वेगवान जलों से बहती है. Okay, and you will see if you read the whole Nadi Sukta how Sindhu is the grandest river in that last portion of Rigveda, Mandala 10. Not because it's a 10, but it's also last portion. That scenario is possible after 13,000. So yes, Rigveda describes the Saraswati as the grandest river and Sindhu also as the grandest river. But if you have to look at those portions and date those portions of river Saraswati as the grandest river, we have to definitely go before 13,000 BC, more than 15,000 years ago. And based on my other data, which is not that easy to always describe, more than 24,000 years. And the Sindhu as a grandest river, we have to look at last 15,000 years and not before. Okay, everyone is familiar with this now, so I'm not going to go in details. The point is that all that we just looked through the river Saraswati, just a pure empirical, geological, geophysics, geochemistry, morphodynamics of rivers type of data, it beautifully corroborates the descriptions of river Saraswati in Mahabharata. It beautifully corroborates the descriptions of river Saraswati, river Yamuna, river Satlaj, both in Mahabharata and Ramayana. And using the references of those rivers from Rigveda, we can actually directionally date the timing of Rigveda. What is it? Yes, there are some portions in 6 millennium BC, the Mahabharata times. There could be other portions that Nadi Sukta could be anywhere from 13,000 BCE to 6th millennium BC. But there are portions which go more than 24,000 years. And if anybody thought, oh, so finally we finished all the research. Yes, Saraswati was flowing for 200,000 years. And 50,000 years ago, Yamuna separated, 15,000 years ago, 1.5, Sattvik separated, and then finally Saraswati just dried out and we are done. Not really. Now this one, what I'm showing you, this is your other guest that most of our audience is the comfortable with, and they have seen her discuss many aspects of very wonderful Indian astronomy and whatnot. Rupa Bhatti ji, she has created this chart. Okay, I'm not expecting you to understand it, read it. If anybody claims that they have understood everything, they are lying. We can tell that. Okay, but what essentially I'm showing is what she has done is looking at some of the evidence from the Puranas, evidence from Rigveda, evidence from various ancient Indian narratives, Indian astronomy. Essentially, these are not, everything is not validated here with empirical evidence. Okay, so these are like, think of some of these as a prediction, especially as we go back to 200,000 years and 220,000 years. But these are the predictions. And so don't be surprised tomorrow the additional evidence comes and that matches with this. In fact, that's what we would like to see. Now, actual whether evidence comes or not, it is not in our hand. So we don't know that. Okay, we cannot be like we cannot demand certain evidence. That's not how research happens. We can keep on looking for the evidence, keep on solving different problems, and by coincidence and by luck, we may actually get the evidence. So with that, Aditya ji, I'm going to stop sharing. That is our part 3, where we went through the factual evidence, taking Saraswati from 200,000 years, and it will actually go back in past, but the evidence is going back to 172,000. Then Yamuna separating 50,000 years ago, Satluj separating 15,000 years ago. Then there is an intensification of monsoon followed by de-intensification beginning with 4,500 BCE, and then river Saraswati disappeared.
Very logical point comes in that whenever a river meets the ocean, it creates a swamp. Ran of Kutch, huge swamp.
Yes.
Where Sindhu Nadi also meets there. And the swamp is in a way that it is more coming towards India. Starts from there. That also shows that there must be another river over there, much bigger. And
right.
And the kind of water we are talking about of Saraswati, which is huge.
Yes.
Another theory which I have a question, I think we can do another session on that.
Hmm.
See, and our description of Shastra is different. Like when the Alaknanda
Hmm.
fell on earth and then
Hmm.
Shivji had to put it in his hair.
Hmm.
And that's how the rivers started flowing. So the entire concept of glacier-based rivers is broken there too, in a way,
Huh. Hmm.
because the water has to come from somewhere.
Hmm.
And the vegetation is so little in that part of the world that it is not just the precipitation has produced the glaciers. So very
Correct.
clever observation. I did not even go there much.
No, no, correct. But see, that is true for all. I mean, even right now, even our times, essentially Ganga, Sindhu, Satluj, they are all glacier fed.
Yeah,
Okay, of course, in addition to the monsoon water,
right.
but they are glacier fed. Saraswati was also glacier fed. It is not a question if Saraswati was glacier fed or not. It is a question of when it was glacier fed
Correct.
and where, and that's why I'm saying they take a perennial river. And when that paper came, that perennial paper I showed you, Chatterjee and all, 2019. And I mean, any new paper come, I quickly read it, and I just read it. I said, "Oh, good paper. It's validating everything that so far I have done." And I said, "Good paper," and just kept it on the side. And just a week goes by, and everyone is saying, "So that paper shows that Rigveda is in 7,000, 5,000 BC." Other people saying, "Nilesh, now your research your claims are falsified." I said, "What are you talking? What paper?" So a factual information may be contained there, but a researcher, the people who write paper may twist it, interpretation, like the genetics they do. But then the reader, the consumer also have their own agenda. So whatever the glasses you are wearing, whatever the color, you start seeing everything supporting it. I mean, that can happen to me, right? And therefore I may read a new paper and say it's supporting me. Then I tell people, let's discuss it. Then they run away. Now what do you do? I don't know where do they fall, those people who run away when actually, we ask for a debate or discussion. Instead, I don't know where they fall. Aditya, do you have any thoughts? Sat, Raja, and Tama?
We just say mythologists because the
Mythology.
mythologist is the right word to call them. But anyway, one thing I really like, and I think it will be very learning experience for the viewers, that Mahabharata and Ramayana and all these itihas never contradict each other.
Hmm.
So, like if it is mentioned as Shadoba in Mahabharata, is Shaloba in Ramayana, and they
Yes.
both point to exactly the same location. Now, if you can match the mountains, I always say that the rivers change their path. Mountains do
Yeah.
not change ever. Like Altai is still there, Pamir Knot is still there. You have Meru, and you have still it is there. And the bamboo, Kichaka bamboos are all still there.
Yes.
So the rivers may come and go, but one thing I can assure everybody that the day Ganga disappears, that time the Kali Yuga is about to end.
Good one. Good one. So when somebody asks you when Kali Yuga is ending, I should ask the question backward. I'm saying when Ganga is going to stop flowing, right?
Our philosophy, we don't give answers because answers you have to find yourself.
Correct.
Our point is to ask questions because that's
Yes.
what Munya Sadhu Prishtavam Bhavat Loka Mangalam. So
Right.
we are here to ask questions. Athato Brahma Jigyasa.
There
And
you
my
go.
question to all the mythologists is also that whosoever claims that Ramayana and Mahabharata may not be factually correct or they just wrote like that,
Yeah.
before you make that judgment, just see who wrote it.
Hmm.
You make the judgment who wrote it. Were
Okay.
they the fake artists like you, or were they WhatsApp artists? No, they were great rishis. I mean,
Yeah.
so they don't have time to do BS in a big way
Correct.
because they are grave personalities. So anyway, great presentation, and also sattva guna is what we all need to do. And if you do not have developed sattva, my only advice, sattva guna, the only advice is to do swadhyaya. That is the best way to develop sattva guna. Thank you so much, and namaskar. Nilesh.
Namaskar. Thank you.